I'm Karima Brown. It's Sunday morning and it's time for The Fix. Today we look at the vexed question of the public protector, who has been called a liar and not understanding the law by the apex court in the land amid calls for her to be impeached and removed from office. Then the NPA head of the Asset Forfeiture Unit, Willie Hofmeyer, is in the hot seat today as he explains how he plans to bring back the billions stolen through state capture. And as is custom, we look at our weekend newspapers to see what's made headlines this week and why. The Fix starts now. This is The Fix, where every Sunday, without fear or favour, we question the big role players. We look ahead to tell you what matters, how it affects you, and why you should care. This week, the Apex Court slammed Public Protector Advocate Busisiwe Mkwebane for being dishonest and upheld a lower court's decision that she's personally liable to pay a portion of the costs in the Bankcorp Absa report, which was, of course, overturned. She also faced criticism that she's playing politics, and calls for her to be removed has echoed across the country as NGOs and political parties calls into question her fitness to hold office. Others, such as the economic freedom fighters and the Black First, Land First movement, have come out in her defence. Joining me this morning to talk through the issues is Nishan Bolton from the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation and the DA leader in the Free State, Mr. Roy Jankelson, who also testified in the Estina Dairy matter at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. Gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to you. Mr. Jankelson, let me start with you. Good morning there from the Free State. You took to the stand together with actual farmers who were meant to benefit from the Estina Dairy project this week. And we actually heard in granular detail how a very poor community was defrauded in favour of monies that were going through to Gupta-linked actors in the state capture project. Now, just take us through your testimony that linked specifically Mr. Zwane and Mr. Isma Khashule to what was happening at the Estina Dairy Farm and how the Guptas became involved.
Good morning, Karima. Yes, the project goes back to 2012, and it was a project that was meant to benefit local farmers with the establishment of a dairy farm and a processing plant. The provincial government traveled to India, procured a company, Estina, to assist with implementing this project. Now, it's interesting because Estina is an IT company and not a dairy company, and originally they indicated that they were partnering with a company Paras in India, which does have the background to assist them with necessary technical expertise on the project. This project was implemented. It was supposed to have a budget of 570 million rand. In terms of the contract between Estina, company Estina, and the provincial government, the provincial government would contribute 324 million rand and Estina 228 million. Now, what made it irritating from the outset is that Estina was both a partner and an implementing agent in this project. The national report also indicates that there were financial irregularities, not only with the government but also with the management of the project, and they recommend that disciplinary action be taken.
Mr. Jankelson, I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment. We seem to be having a problem with your sound. We're going to try and fix that. But in the meantime, let me bring in Nishan Bolton from the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. Now, Mr. Jankelson was sketching the nexus, obviously, and the genesis of what went wrong in Estina. Now, the two important politicians that took decisions in that matter, so of course the former Premier and the current Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule, and of course the former Minister of Minerals, Mr. Busisiwe Mkwebane, who's now a Member of Parliament. Now, the reason why I'm putting this to you, Mr. Bolton, is you've called for the Public Protector to actually be removed from office. Now, one of the reports that she did investigate was Estina, and we've seen the evidence in front of the Zondo Commission clearly implicating those two politicians, but her report actually exonerates her. Is this one of the reasons why you find that she's unfit to hold office?
Well, the foundation has in fact basically called on Parliament to initiate the proceedings to evaluate her fitness to hold office. I think the Helen Suzman Foundation and others have been more forthright. They have actually called for her removal. Mm-hmm. But there has to be a process that has to be gone through in order to get to that end result. I think the Estina case is perhaps one of the more powerful ones, in which it is clear that her inability to actually go to the heart of the matter, to talk to the people who were directly affected, on claiming that she could not find them, and at some point wanting Musimai money. And she basically said it was his responsibility to bring the witnesses to our offices. Shows the kind of priorities and where she was basically putting her energy. If you compare the energy put into the Estina case and look at the energy put into all of the cases brought against Gordhan, Minister Pravin Gordhan, and now perhaps the President, one would begin to question how she evaluates these cases, what's the driving force behind it, and why the ongoing focus on issues that have been dealt with at other levels and have in fact thrown out in many of those instances. And you can only but come to the conclusion that her selection of cases and her perseverance on them points to perhaps a different agenda that she might be driving.
Now, this question of the fitness of the Public Protector to hold office, when the matter of Pravin Gordhan around withholding on the remedial action was heard in the week, the case against him, the people arguing against him being given the right for that remedial reaction to be withheld, said that he basically attacked the institution and the integrity of the Public Protector. He used really strong words to describe her actions and accused her of state capture and so on. And a lot of people felt that, you know, she was personally being held responsible for this matter. Now, the person of the Public Protector, separate from her office, has been the subject of a political football for a very long time. She was appointed probably by one of the most progressive and transparent processes open in Parliament. I want us to just take a listen, Mr. Bolton, to the EFF's initial assessment after they backed her when they questioned her efficacy to be in the role of the Public Protector. They have, of course, now come back to her defense. But I just want to listen to this clip for listeners and viewers to get a sense of how this office is being used by political parties as a political football. Let's take a listen.
Hey. Useless. That woman. Terrible mistake we've done.
Did you make a mistake?
Terrible. We are looking at some way, man, of rescuing that office. We've just took a Gupta puppet from Gupta's kitchen and went to plant her there. I said we must give her a chance. Let's give her a chance. She's proving without fail that she's sent there to go and destroy that office. So from today, you must stop calling a Public Protector. You must call a State Protector. That's a role. State Protector.
Of course, Mr. Jankelson, that is Mr. Malema in his usual colourful language, saying that he actually believes that the public protector is not acting in the interest of the public, but in the interest of the state. Now, your party is in a similar dilemma. You are calling for her to be removed, and yet your leader defended his decision to actually ask her to investigate Cyril Ramaphosa. You can't have it both ways, surely, Mr. Jankelson. If the Constitutional Court in the land finds that the public protector is in fact someone that is dishonest, someone that deliberately withholds information, then how can you have faith in her abilities to conduct an investigation that will not be suspect, and given the fact that you yourself as a party have asked for her to in fact be removed from office?
In the case of the Vrede Dairy project, we did take the public protector's report under judicial review, and we got a finding that the report was unconstitutional, unlawful. She's busy appealing. I think what's very important to note is you have to separate office of the public protector from the individual holding that. And it is an institution, and we expect the institution of the public protector to do their job effectively. So even though not support or like the person in office, it doesn't mean that we have to stop reporting incidents of malfeasance to the public protector.
Mr. Jankelson, why don't you, considering the fact, Mr. Jankelson, that the several courts have found the public protector as a person, not as an institution, this particular individual, to not comply with the law, to not be thorough, to in fact withhold information, to not speak to witnesses, why would you not take the matter straight to the Hawks? Why take it to an institution that you have admitted is in fact compromised?
We do have the, if you have enough proof of illegal activity, to take it to the Hawks. But I can speak to the issue of Estina, because that's the issue I've been involved with. I haven't been involved with other incidents that the DA has referred to the public protector. We were hoping, referring the Vrede Dairy project to the public protector, that we will get an outcome through an investigation which we can then use to take further, perhaps to the Hawks or to other institutions. So it's one of the steps that we took regarding the dairy project. First go to the public protector to request an investigation there. And we were actually hoping one of the recommendations that there must be a criminal investigation into this project. But you must also remember that the Office of the Protector is not one. In every province where people investigate various issues, the reports themselves not necessarily drafted by the individual in that office. She can make changes to those reports, and I think that is important, that the investigation in place and the public protector herself is not perhaps making the recommendations based on outcomes of those investigations on the ground, but perhaps on a personal basis.
When Mr. Jankelson says something as serious as he's just said now, that the public protector is not actually basing her, especially in the Estina case, Mr. Bolton, her judgment and her rulings on her personal feelings rather than the evidence, surely she brings that office into disrepute. I mean, this is a Chapter 9 institution. She's a creature of our Constitution. Doesn't she undermine the very Constitution she's meant to uphold?
Well, that's the summary of the Constitutional Court judgment on the Bankcorp matter. And I think they have found a wanting in a whole range of issues there. But fundamentally, her understanding of her role comes into question significantly.
Mm-hmm. Now, if Mr. Jankelson is to be understood correctly, when I posed the question to him, if the public protector as a person is acting in a dubious manner, borne out by findings of lower and the highest court in the land. Why still take issues to the public protector? In your view, as an organization that looks at the criminal justice system, that's looked at how it was eked out for state capture purposes, I mean, we saw, for example, the president fire, Nomkobo Jiba and Mr. Lawrence Mkhwebane from the NPA. Is the public protector, in the view of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, in the form of Busisiwe Mkwebane, still a place where ordinary citizens can get justice for excesses on the part of government officials?
Our view is that we must continue to flood that office with cases and continue to test the credibility and the efficacy of the incumbent in that office. And where she is found to be glaringly wanting, as was in the last case, that must be exposed. One of the cases that she's now just announced on the whole SARS staffing issues and so forth.
Yeah, the appointment of Mr. Kisvete, the commissioner.
And other staffing matters. It seems as if, from what I read, was a matter reported to her office 2 weeks ago.
By anonymous sources whom she's refusing to reveal.
But what this says to us, that if something was reported 2 weeks ago and she has already prioritized it, it certainly means that a whole range of organizations and individuals need to take cases to that office and begin to require that same kind of speedy treatment. Where it is not given, then I think we have the responsibility to expose it, because she has certainly now set a benchmark in terms of turnaround time. I think it would be it would be a huge undermining of the office if there was to be a campaign which simply said don't go there anymore because the incumbent currently is questionable, because what the long-term damage that will do to the institution we don't know, and I think. It also shouldn't stop anybody from using any other agencies of government who have a responsibility to investigate any kinds of claims of corruption or maladministration, and sometimes you use multiple avenues, which is what I think we would begin to say people need to do.
Nishan, just hold that thought. Mr. Jankelson, let me ask you a very point-blank question. Is Busisiwe Mkwebane fit to be the public protector and to head up that all-important Chapter 9 institution?
We would not have taken the report under judicial review if we had confidence in her to hold that office. So no, I don't think she's competent to hold that office. I think we must replace her. Just to come back to his question about reporting cases, if you don't trust the criminal justice system, it shouldn't prevent you from reporting criminal cases to the police. The same applies to protect. You might not trust the person in the office, but we have to uphold the integrity of that office as something from our Constitution.
Now, Mr. Bolton, this difference is often not understood by, your average South African. People believe that why do you take exception to the public reporter if she rules in this case in a particular way and you like her when she rules in that case in a particular way? How should we separate, or how should we measure whether this particular public protector is actually acting within the prescripts of her office, the Constitution, and her mandate? What is it that we must use to judge whether she's being fair or not?
Well, I think one has to take it on almost a case-by-case basis, and what her rulings are there, and whether the soundness of her arguments on which she then comes to her conclusions would have to be tested. And you would also have to look at how long those cases have been in the public domain, and the thoroughness of her investigations themselves, I think, for me is fundamental. Whether she has followed all the processes, whether she's interviewed all of the respective role players, and whether her findings, in fact, begins to point to a sense of justice and fairness, particularly as would have been in the Stina case, for people who have been blatantly robbed of their livelihoods and who are not even given a hearing. And others basically get off scot-free in that particular case. And there's a very clear case, and the grounds for review are in fact very solid.
Okay, Mr. Bolton, we've run out of time. Mr. Jankelson, thank you so very much for speaking to us there from the Free State. After the break, we hear from the NPA's head of the Asset Forfeiture Unit, Mr. Willie Hofmeyer, on plans to bring back the billions lost through the state capture project and corruption.